Hello everyone and welcome to this session. Today I'm going to talk about Indian economy. So whatever inputs I'm going to share with you in this session will help you in getting a deeper understanding about our economy. So without any further ado, let's get started with this session. To start with, I want to take a step back and I'm going to share with you the historical overview pertaining to our economy. So as far as historical overview is concerned, what is it that you should be aware of? First and foremost, let's talk about pre-LPG days. Now, what do we mean by this term? This is a very important term. Remember this, LPG. It stands for liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Liberalization essentially is where the government gets out of the business practices and it allows the private people to pursue their business ventures without much of a red tape. That is called liberalization. Privatization is essentially government getting out of it and allowing private businesses or private individuals to take over the businesses. Globalization is the policy of facilitating global trade. So before LPG scheme was carried out in India, how exactly was our economy? Let's understand that. So to start with, what kind of an economy was ours? Ours was what we call inward looking economy. Focus on the word inward. Looking within, that's the meaning of inward. So what does inward economy basically means? It means we did not really want to do foreign trade with others. We want to produce goods for our own self and consume our own self. So that's the reason I'm using the word inward. It was not an outward looking economy. It was more of a inward looking economy. The idea here was to go for import substitution. It means the government's approach was do not import items from other foreign countries and try and see to it that wherever possible try to substitute import by producing goods on your own. So that was the policy in general. I'm sure you must have heard of the term Swarajya. So that was the approach that the government had at the time, which was basically of self-dependence instead of depending on others. There were strict controls over currency convertibility. What do you mean by this? It was not very easy to convert rupee into dollar and dollar into rupee. There were strict measures in place from Reserve Bank of India's side as such. There were a lot of tariffs. There were a lot of taxes. There were a lot of barriers that were put in place for businesses to be carried out. So it wasn't easy for any foreign player to come to India and operate in India as such. Then Government of India a few decades back carried out nationalization of private banks, wherein the government at the time decided to take over the private banks and make them government entities. That is what was nationalization of private banks. There were sectors that were reserved for small scale industries. So the idea was to promote small scale industries, and certain sectors were actually reserved for these kind of small scale industries. Apart from this, some more information about LPG, that is before liberalization, privatization and globalization was carried out. By the way, which government carried out LPG scheme? Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao's government, they carried out LPG in India. Mr. Manmohan Singh was the finance minister of India and Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao was Prime Minister of India, and collectively they carried out liberalization, privatization and globalization approach in India, and this is what opened up doors to foreign players, and this is where Indian economy prospered. Now, before LPG, what else was there? It was mandatory to get license for all types of industry. In fact, a term that you will often see being used is license Raj. Remember this. The term commonly used is license Raj. License Raj basically refers to the fact that for doing any kind of business entities, they had to procure not one, not two, sometimes dozens of licenses. And it was not easy to procure licenses. Unfortunately, many a times bribes were paid, under the table dealings were carried out. So it was very, very difficult for businesses to operate. There was very low professionalism and lot of inefficiency among public sector units. So the government companies, they didn't operate efficiently. A lot of inefficiencies were in the system, both at an individual level as well as a systematic level. There were a lot of inefficiencies. That's the reason PSUs quite often used to run in losses. There was high amount of political interference. Every single business action, economy related action was controlled very tightly and rigorously by individuals, that is politicians. So this created a lot of trouble for businesses to operate, because the political interference always creates it, makes it a challenge for businesses to thrive, right? Now, low private investment used to happen. That's pretty obvious, yes, because so many challenges were there, so many tariffs were in place, so many licenses had to be procured, so much of political interference used to happen. Now, think about it. Which private player would like to operate in these kind of suffocating environment as such? That's the reason it was very rare to find a private player coming up and investing in our economy as such. There were restrictions in place for foreign capital to enter into India. A lot of restrictions were in place. So that's the reason I said for a multinational company to enter into India those days was very, very difficult. That's the reason there were very, very few foreign companies which used to operate in India. Most of the bigger players, they used to say it's a very suffocating place. It's not a place where you can thrive, and that's the reason hardly any multinational companies used to operate in India. Now, as I said earlier, Prime Minister Narasimha Rao and Finance Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, they came together and they brought about the historical change with regard to our economy, what we call as LPG, liberalization, privatization and globalization reforms were carried out. Now, these reforms, they were not carried out in one go. You have first generation reforms, you have got second generation reforms as well. So let's understand what exactly was done to begin with as part of first generation reforms. So to start with, remember I spoke about license Raj. So to start with, Government of India decided we are going to cut down on the amount of licenses that need to be procured in order to operate a business. We will try to make it much more easier for any multinational company that visits India to operate in India. That's what is delicensing. Then taxation reforms were carried out, because back in the day the taxes were humongous, and when you tax 60-70% of the money that these companies are making, then what would be the incentive for any company to come and operate in your country? So that's the reason taxation reform was carried out. Both direct taxes as well as indirect taxes reforms took place. Then foreign exchange norms were relaxed. See, back in the day, it was very difficult for multinational companies to take money from India and take it abroad. So the government have relaxed the process and they started allowing FII and FDI. These are interesting terms. Let me explain them to you. Let's start with FII. Foreign institutional investors, these essentially are investments that foreign companies do in India, basically in our stock market. So if foreign investors are investing in our stock market, that is called FII. Then what do we mean by FDI, foreign direct investments? Foreign direct investments are essentially where these foreign companies come and operate in India. They set up an office, they set up a manufacturing plant, they put entities in place for the business to operate. Technical know-how is also shifted to India as such. Knowledge transfer also takes place. It generates a lot of jobs. It generates a lot of opportunities. FII is simply investing money, whereas FDI is actually establishing your business within India as such, right? So FDI is much more beneficial for a country's economy than FII, because FDI creates jobs. FDI opens up a lot of opportunities for you. So FDI is always better for a country's economy than FII. Now, what do we mean by dividend repatriation? See, taking money from India and taking back to your motherland, the place where the company originated from, that is dividend repatriation. That was allowed. Ladies and gentlemen, this was arguably the most attractive aspect as far as foreign multinational companies were concerned, because think about it. Use common sense and think about it. For any multinational company to operate, what is the motivating factor? What is it that motivates them? Obviously, money, profits. When you allow these companies to take money from your country and then take it back to wherever they want, that would be very big motivation for them to come and operate. So this was carried out by Government of India. Then Security Exchange Board of India, SEBI, was established, and this was a watchdog that ensured that stock exchange transactions were properly carried out. It improved efficiency of stock market, and thanks to SEBI, things have run very smoothly. Even when scams took place, SEBI was there to keep an eye on it. They caught hold of the culprits, and they have ensured that those kind of things don't get repeated. So SEBI was created for exactly that purpose. Banking sector reforms were also carried out. Remember, I spoke to you earlier and I spoke about nationalization of banks, wherein the private banks were nationalized. But after liberalization took place, we allowed private banks to again operate. And that is where banks like HDFC and ICICI, Axis Bank, etc., they came into the picture and they have thrived after that. Finally, Reserve Bank of India, it relaxed a little bit of the control on these private banks. They had comparatively more amount of autonomy to function and carried out the business. This was first generation reforms. Now let's shift to the second generation reforms. What happened later on as part of second generation of reforms? Let's have a talk about that. To start with, the infrastructure reforms were carried out. It's an ongoing thing. The second generation reforms, some of those are still being carried out. For example, our minister, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, he has done a lot with regard to the infrastructure development. The kind of highways that are being created, for instance, is absolutely remarkable. The kind of ports that has come up is absolutely fantastic. A lot of airports have also been constructed in the recent past. So it's an ongoing affair. Infrastructure has always been the bottleneck of India's development, and a lot of multinational companies have repeatedly pointed it out to Government of India, and Government of India, as part of second generation reforms, is carrying out so many changes with regard to infrastructure. Similarly, telecom reforms were also carried out. Earlier, only government company used to operate. BSNL had a monopoly on India's telecom sector. That was changed and private players were allowed to enter. That's where we had companies like Airtel, for example, or Vodafone, for example, or Jio, for example. They are all there thanks to these telecom reforms. And I'm sure you would agree with me that competition is good for customers. So more these players entered and the monopoly of BSNL ended. That's what improved the kind of facilities that we consumers got. The tariffs that we paid also came down. The quality of the service also improved. Competition helps. And that's exactly what happened with telecom reforms. Insurance sector's reforms also happened. Both general insurance companies as well as life insurance companies were allowed to operate. And again, as a result of these reforms, a lot of private players entered into insurance sector, because earlier only LIC used to function. But after these reforms, you had a lot of multinational companies also showing interest and they have entered into Indian market. The next one is a challenging one, labor law reforms. So multinational companies wanted India to make it easier for them to hire people as well as easier for them to fire people. Because in India, labor unions were very strong and they did not allow companies to fire employees easily. But remember, if business is not running well, if it's not happening efficiently, there may be times, unfortunately, where you have to downsize. That's exactly what multinational companies ask government to do. So government has made changes, but still there is a lot of room for improvement when it comes to labor law reform. So it's an ongoing process, it's undergoing as we speak. Disinvestment is the process of government selling out its stake to private individuals in PSUs so that the private players can take up the stake of government and operate businesses. This is called disinvestment. The advantage of disinvestment is government will get a lot of money in return which they can use for development purpose. Another advantage, private players generally bring in more efficiency into the system as such. Finally, power sector reforms. See, power sector reforms essentially means that the power that the country generates, right, the amount of money that the government charges, it should be done in such a manner that the power company should not suffer losses. So currently, changes are happening, but if you look at the historical approach of governments, what governments usually do is they provide power to farmers and village people, rural people, poor people at a subsidized rate, especially farmers. They suffer losses, companies suffer losses. And then they sell the power to normal middle class consumers, right? On not profit basis, not loss basis, on the cost basis. But the loss that they have incurred because of supplying power to farmer at subsidy, they have to recover it. So how do they recover it? By selling power to industries at a premium. That is generally how they have operated. But their reforms were needed because when you are selling power to industries at a premium, obviously it may not be cost effective solution as far as companies are concerned. That's the reason I am saying power sector reforms are needed. Now, let's understand in part 2 the basic features of Indian economy. Let's understand it a little better. So, India, what are the basic features of India? Our country has got low per capita income. The per capita income is very less compared to the other countries. This is mostly because of the huge population that India has got. We as a nation, we are dependent on agriculture as far as employment is concerned. Close to half of the population, almost half of the population in India is directly or indirectly employed in agriculture. And India also has got huge rural population. One interesting difference between India and developed countries, other developed countries is, in most developed countries, major chunk of population lives in urban areas. In our country, major chunk of population stays in rural India as such. And if you look at the density of population, it is humongous. As far as 2011 census figures are concerned, in a square kilometer area on an average, 382 people live in India. So, very densely populated country is ours. The rate of unemployment is 3.2%. As far as 2023-24 figures are concerned, it was 3.2%. But remember, this figure may not give you the real picture because there may also be disguised unemployment that takes place in many places. What is disguised unemployment? It's basically when a situation where a job that could have been carried out by one person is being done by two persons. That is called disguised unemployment. Then India, as you would know, has a high amount of unequal distribution of wealth. So, on one hand you have super rich people, on the other hand you have got very poor people. So, the disparity between rich and poor is humongous. Other features of India, we still have got high illiteracy rate, right? The literacy rate is not high in our country. Government has made a lot of attempts, and yes, literacy rate has improved in the last couple of decades, but still there is a huge room for improvement. Informal sector is dominating in India as such. What is the difference between formal and informal sector? Formal sector is where things happen in a very organized manner where rules and regulations are there in place, and that is a formal structure is in place. That is formal sector. Informal sector is basically, let's say, where daily laborers operate, right? This is not a formal sector. Or let's say where people are selling stuff on their carts, vegetable carts. That is again informal. So informal sector is dominating in India as such. Low level of technology is used in India usually to carry out the task, and because low level of technology is being used, as a result of this, unfortunately, the productivity will also come down. Because of huge amount of poverty in India, there is huge amount of chronic malnutrition among children. What do you mean by chronic malnutrition? Under the age of 5, 50% of our children do not get adequate amount of calories, adequate amount of nutrition. So that is what is known as malnutrition. They are not getting enough calories to survive. They are not getting enough vitamins, minerals, and nutrition in general. That's the reason we call it malnutrition. In India, there is a lot of insecurity among people. They don't have that confidence that things will be good in future as far as their earnings are concerned. As a result of this, most of the people in India, they have a mindset of saving money. They always say, I'm sure your parents must have also told you, save money for rainy day, save money for bad times. So everybody has that mindset of saving money. And they spend less, they try to save more. That is not good for our economy. Because the more you consume, the more you spend, it is better for the economy as well. But unfortunately in our country, because of that insecurity, people tend to focus on saving more and spending less, which is not good for the economy as such. Now, what I'm going to do as part of part 3 is, I'll analyze each of the sector one by one. Okay? And let's understand a little deeper, at a deeper extent, information about each of the sectors. So what are the 3 sectors I am going to talk about? First and foremost would be the primary sector. What do I mean by primary sector? See, it deals with agriculture, livestock, forestry, fishing, mining, and quarrying. So essentially this is direct, it has a direct connect with nature, environment. That is primary sector. Remember, if you look at our history of mankind, man initially was dependent on primary sector. So that's exactly what we are going to start with. Then we will shift to secondary sector, which deals with manufacturing, electricity, gas, water supply, and other utility services, and of course construction sector also. That is called secondary sector of economy. Finally, we have got services. Services, it includes trade, it includes hotels, it includes tourism, it includes transport, it includes communications, that is telecom communications, it includes professional services. What do I mean by professional services? For example, we at TIME, we offer coaching for various entrance exams. So we are providing a service. Or for instance, let's say marriage bureaus, right, matrimonial sites, they are also providing a professional service. So professional services also constitute a good chunk of revenue as far as India is concerned. So that is the third sector of our economy. Now, what is the share of these sectors in our gross value allocation? Let's understand that. So, let's start with agriculture and allied sector. This actually contributes 16% to our economy. 16% of it comes from agriculture and allied sector. As far as industries are concerned, almost 30%, 29% to be more specific, comes from industries, and more than half, 55%, comes from services. That's the reason, ladies and gentlemen, Indian economy is supposed to be a service sector based economy. We are heavily reliant on service sector for our economy. Now, as far as our GDP is concerned, what do I mean by GDP here? Gross domestic product. The sum total of all the products and services produced within the domestic boundary of India in a financial year is known as its GDP. So as far as India's GDP is concerned, it is expected to rise at 6.4% in 2024 and 2025. Whereas India's gross GDP is projected to grow between 6.3 to 6.8% in the next year, following year in 2026. The real GVA is estimated to grow by 6.4%. Alright, gross value added would be growing by 6.4% in financial year 25. What do we mean by GVA, by the way? GVA essentially is, if you look at the cost of producing the services, if you remove the cost of producing the services from the money obtained by selling those services, that is the GVA as such. So that is something that you have to bear in mind. Now let's look at the sector-wise performance of India's economy. Remember, I am quoting Economic Survey of 2024 and 2025. This is very important. Whatever values I am sharing in this particular session, you can quote these values blindly without any hesitation, because these are authentic figures taken from Government of India Economic Survey as such. So, as per the survey, agriculture sector is expected to grow, but it will only grow at 3.8% in 2025 financial year. So, it's not growing at a rapid pace. 3.8% is a slow growth rate. So, agriculture doesn't grow at a rapid pace. Unfortunately, the growth rate is less than 4%. The industry comparatively will have a better growth rate. Industry is expected to grow at a rate of 6.2%. Now, the service sector, which is actually the backbone of our economy, it is expected to grow faster. It is expected to grow at a rate of 7.2%. That's the good news for India, that service sector is growing at a rapid pace. But compare it with this. As far as the distribution of workforce is concerned, the people who are employed in different sectors are concerned, unfortunately, agriculture sector, it has the maximum amount of employment. Almost half of the people in India are dependent on agriculture for their jobs. Now look at this. Agriculture, almost half of the people are employed, but the growth rate will be only 3.8%. That's the problem that our people have. Industries, on the other hand, what percentage of the population will be employed in industries? Almost 1/4 of the population is employed in industries. Remaining almost 30% people are employed by service sector. 29.7% people are employed in service sector. Remember, again I am reiterating, these are official figures of Government of India as per the economic survey that was carried out. Now, let's talk about agriculture sector a little bit more in detail. As far as India's agriculture sector is concerned, the food grain production that India has seen in 23-24, we had seen an increase in food production. In fact, it has reached 332 million tons. That's a big number, my friend. But even though it's a big number, should we be mightily pleased with it? Not really, because India's population is humongous and almost half of that population is employed in agriculture. Now, why do we have such compare? If I take that population into consideration, labor force into consideration, then it's not a very impressive number. But why is it low considering that aspect? I'm going to share it with you after some time. Now, the central government, they have set a target. The target they have set for the food production in the next year is 341 million tons. That's the target that they have kept in place. Hopefully, they will reach this target, but it also depends on what kind of rains we get in the rainy season. So let's keep our fingers crossed for that. Now, in order to improve the primary sector of India, Government of India has carried out a lot of schemes. We can call them revolutions. A lot of revolutions have been carried out by Government of India. Let me give you an idea about them. To start with, we have got green revolution, right? What exactly do we mean by Green Revolution. See, Green Revolution is essentially a policy of Government of India to increase the food grain production in India. And thanks to Green Revolution that was carried out, the food production in India went up. Then Government of India focused on fisheries, and they took steps and measures that encourage fishery sector in India. And thanks to those measures, the amount of fishes that was cultivated in India went up, and we started exporting them as well. So that is known as Blue Revolution of India. White Revolution, Mr. Korean Varghese gets the credit for carrying out White Revolution in India. So Korean Varghese, he was instrumental in milk production increasing in India. He was chairman of Amul for a few decades, and Mr. Varghese, he gets the credit for increasing milk production in India, and proudly today India happens to be world's leading milk producer. That is called White Revolution. Then Golden Fiber Revolution refers to the schemes of Government of India to increase the jute production in India as such. Sweet Revolution refers to the policy of Government of India to encourage production of honey in India as such. Finally, Purple Revolution is carried out by Ministry of Science and Technology, especially in Kashmir, to essentially increase the cultivation of lavender. Because remember, lavender, it needs a certain kind of climatic conditions which are very much prevalent in Jammu Kashmir, and the lavender has a lot of takers, because lavender oil, for instance, it's used by a lot of sectors, and a lot of products consume lavender oil, right? So lavender production was the focus of Purple Revolution, and they did succeed to an extent where the lavender production has gone through the roof as such. Now, what are the achievements of India's agricultural sector? Kindly observe carefully on the screen. India is the second largest producer of rice. So we are the second largest producer of rice in the world as such. China happens to be the number one, but we are number two. Similarly, in wheat also, we are the second largest producer. So both rice and wheat, India is the second largest producer. And remember, rice and wheat, those are the staple diet of Indians, right? In northern India, you will see more people consume wheat. In southern India, more people consume rice. We are also world's fourth largest producer of oil seeds. So oil seeds are very lucrative, right? They generate oil from this. So we are the fourth largest producer of oil seeds in the world as such. Also, we are second largest producer of sugar in the world. We are second largest producer of tea in the world, right? If you see our hills, our valleys, for example, you will see a lot of tea plantations in places like Ooty, places like Shimla, places like Dehradun. A lot of tea production happens. India is also second largest producer of eggs. Eggs cultivation also is on a very high as such. Second largest producer in the world. India was ranked first in milk production. I told you, Mr. Korean Varghese and the White Revolution that happened in India propelled India. And if I remember correctly, it was more than a decade back where India had beaten America, and today India is world's first in milk production. India is third largest producer and consumer of ethanol. Ethanol is a good source of energy, and we are the third largest producer as well as consumer. Apart from that, India has world's largest livestock of 536 million. That's the number of livestock that we have in India as such. So if you look at cows, sheep, goats, etc., that is what is livestock. Then India is world's second largest manufacturing hub for mobile phones. So we have made instrumental advancement even in the field of manufacturing sector. If you look at the auto market, India now has become third largest auto market in the world. So because of the size of the population as well as the number of people desiring to take up vehicles, thanks to increase in the money supply in hands of common man, the automobile consumption has also increased in India, and today we are third largest auto market in the world. India is ranked 8th in meat production, right? And India ranks 7th. If you look at the global ranking, India is ranked 7th when we basically have 4.3% share in the global services exports. As I said, service sector is the backbone of Indian economy, and that actually we have got 4.3% of the global share. India is second largest cement producer in the world. Number 1 is China, number 2 happens to be India as such. And even in global telecommunications, if you look at India, we are world second ranked country as such. And even if you look at computer and information services also, if you look at the exports, again we are second in the world. We command 10.2% of global export market when it comes to these domains. Now, when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry, we are world's third largest. If you look at the volume of trade that is happening, India is ranked number 3 in pharmaceutical sector as well. If you look at India's foreign exchange reserves, the amount of foreign currency that we hold, foreign exchange reserves of India, it has touched amazing $704 billion in September 24, right? And of course, by December 24, it came down and it came down to $640 billion. But still, that number is humongous, my friend. So, India has a huge amount of foreign exchange reserves. See, foreign exchange reserves is very important for a country's economy because it gives you a safety net. You have got money at your disposal that you can use to buy crude oil and other essential commodities. Now, the FDI that has come into India, it has crossed 1 trillion mark, right? If you compare from April 2000 to September 24, then the number has crossed $1 trillion mark. That is exceptional. India's global share in manufacturing is 2.8%. But this 2.8% is nothing, because if you look at China, they have 28.8%. That means 10 times the size of India is China's manufacturing sector. That's the reason Prime Minister Modi, he wants Make in India movement to succeed. Because if that succeeds, and this manufacturing share of India goes up, that's what will propel the next wave of growth in India as such. And India is leading producer of jute in the world, and it ranks second in terms of cotton, silk and man-made fiber production. So, textile sector, it happens to be very, very big and important sector for Indian economy, and we are ranked second. India is 6th largest producer of textiles. We export textile and we are 6th largest in terms of the textiles that we produce and we export to other countries. Around 4% of the global trade has been captured by India, but there is huge room for improvement. Then, as per WIPO report, India is ranked 6th among the top 10 patent filing offices globally. Again, there is a room for improvement here, considering that we have got world's largest population. Ideally speaking, we should not be number 6, we should be number 1, if not at least number 2. That's the idea. That's the reason Government of India is also pushing Indians and Indian academicians to get more into R&D. India is ranked 31st out of 89 countries with regard to the Global Real Estate Transparency Index. It basically measures how much of transparency exists in real estate sector. Now, this definitely has a room for improvement, because 31 out of 89, it's not a big achievement. India hopefully will become the 3rd largest economy by 2030 after USA and China. USA may continue to be number 1, China may be number 2, and India hopefully by 2030 aims to become the 3rd largest country. In order to do that, first India has to beat Germany, then Japan, and then we will become the world's 3rd largest economy. Currently we are at number 5, but hopefully in another few years we will become number 3. But if you look at India, as far as nominal GDP is concerned, we are number 5. But if we consider purchasing power parity as a criteria, then we are world's 3rd largest economy. Purchasing power parity is essentially where we also take into consideration the purchasing power of $1, the way it is in your country. And basically you take cost of living into consideration, and on the basis of that, if you compare, then ladies and gentlemen, we are world's 3rd largest economy in terms of PPP. But in nominal GDP, we are number 5 as such. India's rank in Global Innovation Index has improved. and now we have come to 39th rank. But still, there is a huge room for improvement. It's not something to be very proud of. There is a huge room for improvement. As far as science and technology is concerned, we are ranked 4th because we have made a lot of strides, a lot of progress has happened in science and technology. For example, if you look at India's pharmaceutical sector, so much innovation has happened there. Similarly, if you look at ISRO, so in space technology, a lot of advancement has also taken place over there also. India is second largest telecommunications market in the world. That's the reason a lot of foreign players are also looking at India as a possible venue. Finally, India leads in mobile data consumption per subscriber, and on an average 21 GB per month is consumed by Indians, which is huge. And we also have got the distinction of having rolled out 5G at a fast rate, very fast rate. But again, of course, we took a little bit of light. 5G technology was already implemented in developed countries, but once it started on ground, the implementation started, it was done the fastest in the world as such. When it comes to tourism sector, 1.8% of the world tourism receipts were in India, and we have a rank of 14th worldwide. But again, considering the kind of rich culture that we have, the monuments that we have, and the potential that we have, we should not be happy with 14th. Hopefully, one day we'll be among the top 3 destinations. India, if you look at the climate change and how vulnerable India is with regard to the climate change, we are 7th most vulnerable country. Now, this is also because we are a peninsula, right? India is surrounded by water on 3 sides. That also makes us very much vulnerable. India was the topmost recipient of remittances in 2024 with an estimated inflow of 129 billion. This essentially happens because huge number of Indians work abroad. NRI population is humongous, and these NRIs, when they work in developed countries like UK, USA, Australia, etc., they send back money to their loved ones. That is called foreign remittances, which is good for India's foreign exchange reserves. India holds the 7th position in intangible asset intensity, surpassing the growth rates of many high-income economies. That is another big achievement of India. India was placed in Tier 1 ranking as far as Global Cybersecurity Index is concerned. So it was supposed to be a good place in terms of cybersecurity. Now, when you look at Bombay Stock Exchange market capitalization value, what do we mean by this term? The term that I want to explain is market capitalization. What is market capitalization? If you look at, if you take the shares, total number of shares, and multiply with the current share value, it is called market capitalization. So if you look at Bombay Stock Exchange market capitalization to the GDP ratio, it is 136% at the end of December 2024. These are all authentic figures. These are all correct figures taken from government websites and government surveys, economic surveys carried out by Government of India. Now, what are the strengths of Indian economy? See, we have huge arable land. What do I mean by arable land? Land which is fertile for agriculture, where agriculture can be carried out. So, arable land, India has huge arable land. It is actually the second largest in the world. We have diverse soil types. When you travel in train in India, you will notice that after every few hundred kilometers, the type of land that you see, the type of soil that you see changes, right? Red soil, alluvial soil, black soil, a lot of variety will be there as such. And because of the diverse soil types, the cultivation will also be pretty much diverse across India. Huge labor force is there. Nobody can complain that they are not getting enough labor because of the huge population and a lot of people looking for employment. You always have got potential of having a lot of labor for any tasks. The government has focused a lot on agriculture. Subsidies have been given for agriculture, and that is a big strength as far as agriculture sector is concerned. Now, what is the weakness? As far as agriculture sector is concerned, the fragmented land holdings is a big weakness. People don't have big chunk of land. Farmers, they have smaller size land. When the land size is small, you may not get a lot of productivity. You may not be able to make a lot of money. The main reason why Indian farmers are poor is amount of land that they hold is not humongous. If you compare India's farmer with, let's say, farmers in China or America, there the land holdings will be humongous. In India, most of the farmers, they have comparatively smaller piece of land, hardly an acre, couple of acres of land. That's not good enough to have a productive agriculture. Also, the amount of research that happens, the innovation that happens is not very high. As a result of this, the productivity may not be very high as such. Also, agricultural credit, the ease at which the farmer can get loan is not very high. That's the reason the farmers sometimes they find it very difficult to get hold of loans, and unfortunately some farmers they end up taking loans from loan sharks. That's a very sad reality. And in India, the farmers, they are tilted towards certain crops, right? And certain crops they completely ignore, which is not a good idea as such. Lot of disguised unemployment is there in the economy. Lot of people, they say they are employed, but actually, two people are doing the job which only one person could have done otherwise. So that is disguised unemployment. There are lack of marketing facilities as far as agriculture sector is concerned. Farmer, even after having a good produce, may not get a lot of money because the farmer doesn't have access to market. So that's a problem. Climate change definitely is a huge concern as far as agriculture sector in India is concerned. If we don't get good rains or if you get a lot of rains, either ways, it's a big problem as far as farmers are concerned. The infrastructure for agriculture needs to improve. It means the kind of roads that are connecting the villages with the markets, right? The kind of mechanisms that we have kept in place, the way the mandis operate in India, vegetable mandis operate in India, that has to improve a lot as such. There is a lot of lack of awareness among farmers, and they need to be aware about alternative crops that they can have in order to have good produce. So that awareness Government of India is trying to create. They have Krishi helplines operating. There are programs that are broadcasted on Doordarshan. In fact, Doordarshan has a separate channel for this purpose. They operate websites also, but still lot more communication needs to happen. Landless labor is there in India. So many people are there who want to do agriculture, but they don't have land. So they work for other farmers as laborers. That's a sad reality. Seasonal unemployment. There are farmers who get jobs only in rainy season. In summer season, they may not be employed. So that is seasonal unemployment. Poor infrastructure, I have mentioned it repeatedly. Then electricity needs to improve. Electricity supply is not up to the mark. Roads and transport is not up to the mark. Even the mechanization of farm needs to be carried out. People are sometimes still operating the old way. They use bullock cart. They use cows and bulls in the fields instead of using modern equipment like a tractor, for instance, right? A lot of modernization needs to be carried out. Illiteracy is huge, and because illiteracy is huge, the farmers don't get access to information, and there is low awareness about the kind of methods that they should have employed in order to improve the production. State disparity essentially means some states are much better at agriculture compared to some other states. So it's not uniform across India. Local money lenders or loan sharks, they give loans to farmers and they charge humongous interest, and it becomes almost impossible for the farmer to return the loan. Unfortunately, some farmers, they commit suicide because they are unable to repay the loans taken by them from the loan sharks. The remuneration that eventually a farmer gets in India is very low. This is essentially because of the middlemen who are involved, the agents who are involved in the middle. They actually take away a lot of the money as such. The laws in the land, they are very antiquated. British time laws are also there in place. Of course, Government of India, thanks to Bharat laws that they have brought in, a lot of things have changed on ground, but there is still room for improvement. Now, what are the opportunities that lie? Especially for agriculture, horticulture could be a domain that farmers should consider. Horticulture or, production of, let's say, flowers, for example, is a beautiful option for farmers because there is a huge demand for flowers, especially in European market. Organic farming. Organic farming is essentially farming that is done without usage of chemicals, fertilizers, chemical fertilizers should not be used, pesticides should not be used. So if you don't use chemicals and do it in a very organic manner, it is called organic farming. There is a huge demand for this because of the awareness among people of the benefits of eating organic produce. There is a huge benefit if the farmer can shift to fisheries, because there is a huge demand for fisheries in India and abroad. And if you look at the market for packaged farm products, the market is humongous. For example, something as simple as cornflakes. Such a big market exists for cornflakes. Productivity improvement, lot of opportunities there, as I said earlier also. IT and communications can be used to improve the productivity by farmers, right? Semiconductors, of course, in Government of India has focused a lot on manufacturing semiconductors in India. Even in the recent budget, a lot of money has been allocated for this. If you look at the industrial sector overview, you must understand that in 1991, Government of India brought in the new industrial policy, and in 2011, Government of India brought in national manufacturing policy. This made a lot of difference to the manufacturing sector in India. In fact, the manufacturing sector share in our GDP has improved, and almost 1/4 of our GDP comes from manufacturing sector because of this. And remember, manufacturing sector creates a lot of jobs. 100 million jobs have got created in this particular sector. Make in India program that was launched in 2014 in 29 sector also has played a good role in this regard. Production linked incentives scheme have been launched across 14 key sectors. That has also encouraged these sectors to perform better. And remember, asset monetization scheme has been brought in by Government of India, which also has brought in the supply in the sector as such. Then PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan has been prepared, and that has been instrumental in the success of this sector. New foreign trade policy that was announced and came into effect in April 1, 2023 also has been instrumental. Now remember, National Industrial Corridor Development Program has been launched, and single window clearance scheme wherein anybody who wants to establish a manufacturing plant will just have to take permission from one particular agency and they can roll out the program on ground. Open Network for Digital Commerce, ONDC, this has helped the e-commerce to a large extent. Decriminalization of key intellectual property acts. This is very important because a lot of people are afraid, and this has ensured that people can operate more comfortably. A big boost has happened in Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, and Make in India movement has actually helped this out. Angel tax as an exemption has been given so that people who are investing money, they will be exempted for tax for certain duration and certain amount. That has encouraged people to have more startups. Dan Vishwas Bill 2.0 has been brought in to decriminalize outdated legal provisions. As I said earlier, our antiquated laws were in place. So this was a move by Government of India to handle that. As far as manufacturing sector is concerned, we have huge population, lot of labor force is available. And remember, this is low cost labor force. So it becomes more easy for you to produce the products at less investment. And we have educated people, skilled workers we have got. English language is known by many of these people. We have good managerial skill set among our people. And as far as raw materials are concerned, because manufacturing sector requires raw material, India has got huge reserves of raw material. Our economy is strong, polity is also stable. For example, for the last almost more than a decade, the same government is in power, the same prime minister we have, so that brings in stability. Even if you look at the government before that, good thing about India's political parties is most of the good schemes of the previous government are carried forward by the current government also. So that's what I mean by strong polity. They may speak against the other political parties during the election campaigns, but when it comes to running the government, they carry forward those good schemes. What are the weaknesses? We have lack of infrastructure in place. That is something that needs to be looked at. High cost of utilities, especially the power sector, as I was telling you earlier. The power sector cost is huge. Power consumption cost is huge. Red tape still exists, though delicensing has happened. License Raj has come down, but still there is room for improvement when it comes to red tape as far as bureaucracy is concerned. Cascading effect of indirect taxes still are there, though GST has handled it to a large extent. Still, there is small room for improvement there also. High cost of finance, taking loans from banks is still costly. Hopefully, government will take measures in future so that the credit can be taken from banks to start businesses. The judicial system, as you know, has a lot of strain because the number of cases in the court are humongous. This hopefully should improve in future. The opportunities for manufacturing sector, drugs and pharmaceutical sector has a lot of potential. Electronics has a lot of potential. Green energy, food processing, healthcare, insurance, textiles, transport sector, biotechnology, automobiles and components that are used in automobile sector, engineering goods. These are all domains where there is a lot of potential to make money as far as manufacture sector is concerned. In terms of service sector, if you look at it, there is a lot of potential to operate in the field of hotels, tourism, trade, transport, logistics, telecommunication, insurance sector, banking sector, real estate sector, IT, social and personal services, entertainment, media, education. These are sectors where there is a lot of potential to make money. And remember, service sector, which is backbone of our economy, it operates very well because we have huge number of educated people that service sector can utilize, and we have a demographic dividend because a huge population of India is young. So when young people are there, getting hold of employees for entry-level jobs becomes very easy. Low labor cost is there, you don't have to pay a lot of salaries. IT and technically, if you look at technology of India, IT companies in India, they are very strong. Also, compared to foreign companies, we have advantage of low cost because $1 is equivalent to 87 rupees. So that gives it that cost advantage also. And then in India, the culture of entrepreneurship is improving. Thanks to Make in India initiative and Government of India's focus on startups, so many startups are booming in India as such. The weakness in service sector, high attrition rate is there. People quit and they leave. And again, you have to hire somebody new and you have to train them. That's a big pain for this industry. And of course, infrastructure needs to improve. And when it comes to labor force, though the labor force is humongous, when it comes to high quality, high skill set labor force, we have a dearth of it. We don't invest enough in R&D sector as well as higher education. A lot more needs to be put in that area. And informal sector, as I said earlier, is humongous, and the labor laws also need to change. Opportunities, humongous opportunities exist in health sector, tourism sector, hospitality sector, offshore consultancy, retail sector, knowledge process outsourcing, renewable energy, global capability centers. These are certain areas where a lot of opportunities is there, and the government should focus on these, and the private people should be encouraged to operate in these particular domains. Finally, let's talk about the foreign trade. What is meaning of foreign trade? Doing business with foreign countries. Now, import is essentially buying something from a foreign country and bringing it to your country. Export is making something in your country and selling it to a foreign country. So, between April and December of 24, India's overall exports, right, they reached $602 billion. But when it comes to imports, they increased by 6.9%. and they touch $682 billion. So remember, when it comes to our export, it is 602, imports are 682. As a result of this, we do have a trade deficit. Our trade deficit is almost $80 billion, 79.5 to be precise, billion dollars. What do you mean by trade deficit? If imports are more than exports, we say trade deficit is there. If exports are more than imports, we would say trade surplus is there. Unfortunately, in our country, we have a trade deficit. Petroleum products are the top exported commodity in India, but crude oil, crude petrol, that is the biggest imported item in India as such. USA is the top destination for exports, and it's the second largest trading partner of India, number one being China and number two being USA. And when it comes to imports, China is the top source of imports in India. So for imports, China is number one. For exports, USA is number one for India. Finally, friends, when you look at external debt that India has taken from World Bank, from IMF, from foreign countries, if you compare it with our GDP, the ratio is 19.4%. So 19.4% is the total external debt that Government of India has got. This is mostly historical debt that has been accumulated over a period of many decades. The trade deficit in India has increased actually. It was 69.7 billion April to December 23. Now it has become 79.5 billion in the same period for 25. Rupee, the value of rupee has fallen, but if you look at how other currencies have fallen, India's rupee has been the least volatile one. Now don't get me wrong, I am not claiming the rupee value did not fall. It fell, but other currencies fell even more as such. This is information that we have all collated from Economic Survey and Press Information Bureau. So this is absolutely authentic information. You can use it with 100% confidence in all exams, all interviews. Very easily you can use this information. So friends, with this I have come to the end of this session. I hope you got a good amount of an idea about Indian economy. Use the figures that I have shared in today's session without any hesitation. Thank you everyone for watching this class.